All right, so we are back here in the now famous Kostal kitchen with Jason Kostal. One of these two brilliant builder is Jason Kostal. It's very confusing because everyone is wearing the same shirt, so no one knows who is who. And Karan Singh from Bigfoot Guitars from
New Delhi.
New Delhi, India.
Yeah.
So first of all, I would like for our viewers to know how you ended up in Jason's kitchen, alive and well, unlike most things that end up in this kitchen.
Especially things that were living and breathing a short while ago.
Sometimes, yes, that is true. So tell us a little bit about, I'm not sure which of you wants to start, but tell us a little bit about how you ended up in this kitchen. Kostal Guitars.
Go ahead.
Okay, so
I'm interested in finding out as well.
Yes.
the short answer is I'm really persuasive. Yeah, please, you can be read as clingy, no. So I met Jason a couple of years ago at a guitar show in Berlin, at the Holy Grail guitar show, and he was kind enough to, try out my guitars a day before the show, and I'd asked him for feedback on my instruments because where I come from, I don't really have a frame of reference. I don't have other guitar makers around me to go and show my work to and talk to them and find out or bounce ideas off of.
Hi, this is Karan Singh from Bigfoot Guitars. We are from New Delhi, India, and I'd like to introduce the guitars that I've brought to the Holy Grail show this year. This one's made, the top is Indian red cedar. It's locally called Toon, and we've got an ebony fretboard, and that's Indian walnut, back and sides. Yeah, that's a parlor-sized small body guitar. The second piece that we have here, it's a flamed Indian white cedar top, which has been seasoning for about 45 years now. And the back and sides for this are Indian ebony.
This was actually the first guitar show I'd ever done, and I walked in there a complete newbie, and Jason happened to be staying at the same hotel as me and was kind enough to come to my room and check out my instruments and give me very detailed, constructive feedback on what I was doing. Yeah, at least that's the politically correct term. And as a result of that, I went back from that show with a lot of ideas, a lot of things that I thought I wanted to work on. And over the last 2 years, I've met him a couple more times at various guitar shows, and each time we meet, the first thing I do is I get him to try out my instruments and just give me honest feedback to figure out, how far I have come or not, and if there is something that I am doing right or not. And that's where we've gone from. And last summer where were we? In Vancouver, at the Vancouver International Guitar Festival. And I was talking to him about, maybe coming down to the US to study. And he very graciously offered to have me over at his place. He said, just come down, spend a few weeks with me at my workshop, and we can go through all the areas or the topics that you would like to discuss and, get more clarity on. And it just started off as a little casual chat over there, and like I said earlier, I can be pretty persuasive. So a few more online conversations later, and here we are. I've been here for almost a month, and I've spent a lot of time with him downstairs in his workshop, seeing how he does things.
So you're kind of doing this by feel and letting the chisel kind of guide along your scribe line of the lacquer.
How they can be done in a much more effective manner than what I have been doing in the past. So there's a lot of, it's just been a wealth of information. It's like an overload of information for me, but it's great because I'm really excited to head back to my workshop next week and put a lot of this to use and create a better instrument going forward, because that's the end goal.
Yeah, this isn't something I would normally do. Bringing someone into the shop and in this case into my home for a month, it can take a lot out of you. So, one of the things that was really impressive to me is early on when I met Karan, like you said, he asked for some feedback, and he was very nice in how he phrased it. But I did ask him, do you want real, authentic feedback, or do you kind of want me to tell you did a great job and everything's wonderful and go on? And he was very sincere in saying, no, give me the honest feedback, and I did. And it wasn't harsh, but there were a lot of things that I felt like he could work on and improve on. And what impressed me the most is the next time I saw him and he presented his guitars to me, he had done everything that I told him I thought he should do. And he had done it very well. And I feel like in this day and age, a lot of people ask for feedback and ask for criticism, but then they kind of take the stuff that they like to hear and the stuff they don't want to hear, separate it, and they don't always kind of follow through with it. So to see somebody that took all the information that I provided and then followed through with it and did a very good job at it really impressed me. And each time I saw Karan and was able to play his guitars again, there was this exponential increase in growth in the quality of the instrument. From when I first met him, and he was kind of the first person from India to be going to an international guitar show, and there was that pride and excitement of being at the show, to seeing him at the last Berlin show earlier this year and feeling like the guitars that he's making are definitely guitars that should be available on the international market, the global market.
Hi, I'm Karan Singh from Bigfoot Guitars. I come from New Delhi, India. I've been building guitars for about 8 years now and 4 years full-time. In an acoustic guitar, there's a million things, there's a million steps to building one. But you'll hear this a million times over, and it's true, it's just all the little things. It's a lot of little steps. There is no one magic thing, there's no one magic step that somebody takes which makes a guitar great. And it's just a continual process of improving on what you've done 100 times before, and you may find it dreary, you may find it boring, but when it all comes together, when all the little things are done right, then it just really makes something magical. And then it becomes special, yeah. And that's fun.
He's got an incredible knack for the craftsmanship and an understanding of the guitar. The guitars sound really good, which to me is kind of the most important thing. And what I've been trying to help him with is ways to improve his process and efficiency, and ultimately work as a small shop, but create the output and product that he's going to be happy with and proud of. And so the reason he's here is because he basically showed me that he had a huge desire to grow personally and become better at what he's doing. And he's somebody that I felt like I could work with, and we could have these discussions and he would understand what I was saying and be able to apply that to the guitars that he's making. And so it's actually been a really incredible month for me too. I've really enjoyed it. There's not many people I could spend a month with and still like them at the end of it.
Still be smiling.
Yeah, but we've had a great time. He's asked some really kind of meaningful questions that show an advanced level of understanding of what we do. And I'm personally very excited to see him go home, apply what he's learned here, and I'm really looking forward to the guitars that are going to start coming out of his shop in the months ahead. So I think that's, for me, kind of a win on my part, because I feel like I've taken somebody that was already moving in the right direction, but we've kind of made that growth process a lot faster and skipped a lot of the trial and error. And I think what you're going to see coming out of the Bigfoot shop in the months ahead is going to blow people away.
But what would be the most interesting question that you think he asked?
Well, I think the biggest thing is usually when people ask another luthier, it's usually about techniques. How do I do this? How do I do that? And Karen's questions were much more about the deeper level of understanding of the guitar itself. We spent a lot of time talking about technique and process, but anybody can figure that out with enough time and trial and error and things like that. What he was really interested in is, how does the guitar work? And how do I take what I understand about the guitar and build upon those foundations and make a much better instrument? And it's an advanced level of understanding, and it's one of those things that for him to be asking those questions, be able to understand the answers and now apply it, shows that he's at a place in his career where, you know, the guitars that he's building are really ready to be at that level, kind of that increased global sales, so to speak. So it's not so much the unique questions, it's that the questions that were being asked were very sincere and just showed a deep desire to improve and grow personally, which is something that I admire and respect. So, you know, I think for me, as I'm looking at his guitars, you know, right now he sells on the international market, but he's focused primarily on India, and there's not a huge market in India. So he's kind of the go-to guy for repairs and for builds, but even though there's a lot of people, the price point is very difficult for the population, the local population in his town and in Delhi to really buy into. And the guitars that he's building are of a quality and level that are much higher than what he's selling for. So my personal recommendation is if you're interested in getting one of his guitars, now is the time to do it, because he's grossly underpriced, and I don't think people fully understand what he's capable of. This is just my personal opinion, but the reality is that what I'm trying to help him understand is that the guitars that he's building are on par with guitars being made everywhere else, and they're much higher quality than what he's giving himself credit for. So the reality is that moving forward, Karan's guitars and Bigfoot guitars in particular need to be on a much bigger global scale. You know, they're going to be in Europe and the United States and Japan and kind of those key markets that he hasn't yet necessarily tapped into yet. And it's not because he's not capable or able, it's just not where his focus has been. So, you know, my goal is to help him move into that community, and I think people are going to be very impressed with the quality of the guitars that they get from him.
And so, Karan, what is the most interesting answer that you got to any of your questions from Jason?
Well, I think that's an interesting question. More than the actual answer itself, I think it was what I really enjoyed and appreciated in my time over here is he doesn't get frazzled by any question that I ask. He doesn't get annoyed or irritated or look at me like that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard anyone ask. He may be thinking it, I don't know. Yeah, but at least it doesn't come out. So more than there being any specific interesting answer, I think what I really appreciated was the way Jason would take any question that I would ask him and answer it in a really positive and sincere manner. I think that's something that I really enjoyed. There was never an expression like, "Man, that's a really stupid thing you're asking me." It's always, he takes the time to explain every little question, every little doubt in a really thorough manner, and that's something that is extremely helpful because his idea is to help you understand the big picture when you're looking at an instrument. It's never about just that one little thing that you're doing, and it's worked for me at least. I mean, it's the way I've taken information the best, I think. So it just made a lot of sense being able to understand how every little step really contributes to and impacts the overall instrument. Because at this point, we're not really discussing the ground level basics of how to build a guitar. It's more in terms of how do I take a guitar and how do I really make it step up to the next level and make it really out of this world. Or that's the idea. And given that context, I think the discussions were extremely interesting and meaningful, and I've got a notebook full of notes now, which is something I've never done in my life, take notes. I've got a bunch of them. Yeah.
And so here, 2 years after you did your first show with your guitars right next to Grit Laskins, talking about a little bit of pressure on you, you know.
No pressure at all. I mean,
No pressure, I'm just gonna put my guitar right next to Grit Laskins, no big deal. You're here with Jason in the kitchen, you know, sort of wrapping up about all these emotions and experiences that you had with him over this month that you stayed here. So if you guys want to start with, you know, maybe how you met at the Holy Grail and that kind of dynamic, or you know, kind of have a conversation with it.
sure.
Well, I think, you know, Karen kind of already covered a lot of it, but essentially, you know, the Holy Grail show, I think, is probably one of the finest guitar shows put on right now. It takes the best aspects of some of the other shows that I used to attend that are no longer around, and really creates a well-organized event that is well attended. And for me, what makes it special, maybe a little bit more so than for Karen, is I don't have access to a lot of the European builders as much as I do the American builders. I can pick up the phone, call any of the US builders any day of the week, and we can talk and have that conversation. But the European builders, because of the time zone difference and things like that, it can be a little bit more difficult. And so while I'm friends with them and I can email them, the interaction isn't there as much. So going to the Berlin show for me is partly about being able to interact with clients and potential buyers in Europe, but it's really, for me, about interacting with the builders and networking and building those relationships and things like that. And I think the EGB really was created to try to do that. My understanding is that within the European guitar community, the lutherie community, people didn't always feel comfortable sharing information and helping one another, and we've always done that pretty well here in the States. And so I think the creation of the EGB has created a group of luthiers where everybody kind of comes together, helps one another more so than maybe they did in the past, and it's an amazing thing. And I feel very honored to be a part of the EGB as a guy from the United States. And so the show is an incredible opportunity, and the biggest thing that I take away from that is the relationships that I gain by going there and meeting new people. And Karen was just one of those people that I had not met before, and I met him, and here it is 2 years later. You know, we have an incredible friendship, we have an incredible professional relationship, and I think enough of him that, you know, I said basically come and hang out in my home for the next month and let's talk about guitars. And like I said, that's not something that I would normally do for somebody. So this relationship and more importantly the friendship would not have been created had it not been for the EGB and the Holy Grail Guitar Show. So for me, that's a huge deal to be able to show that what they're trying to accomplish is actually being accomplished. And this relationship and the fact that he's here right now and I'm going to be going to India in March to go spend time with him is a very quantifiable way of saying that these relationships and friendships are being created. And more importantly, the professional side of it, you know, being willing to help someone in another continent that's trying to do what I've done and you know, help him get to the point that he wants to get to. And learning is a two-way street. You know, I mean, I've learned things from him. It's not, you know, I'm some wise master that knows everything. I don't even come close to thinking I know everything. And one of the things that I've learned is that when you're in a vacuum, like Karen is in his world, you tend to have to be very innovative in how you create your work and how you accomplish the tasks that you have. So sometimes the ways that he's come up with doing something is very different than the way that I do it, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, that's a great idea. You know, I want to take that and kind of run with it. So the learning's been definitely two-sided, and I've grown a little bit as a person as well, and a builder, and it's been a good experience.
What has it been for you, Karen, despite all the physical abuse and what is the thing? If there's one thing that you could say about, you know, this whole experience.
That's just the truth of it. I think my last 1 month here has there's been a lot of information that I've gotten, but I think the reason why I like him so much and why I get along with him is because he's an amazing guy. He's one of the nicest human beings I know. And he approaches almost everything in life the same way, which is just with positivity and with this eagerness to try and make things better, whatever that may mean, or help, or improve someone's situation. And most of the time it has nothing to do with guitars. And if there was one learning that I go back with, that's what it is. As a result of that, if I can make a better guitar, then all the better. But I think that's a lot more important to me than being able to voice a guitar properly at this point.
Thank you. That means a lot to me.
And Jason, despite the physical abuse as well, and what would be the same question basically? You know, if you could tell us what this experience brought to you,
I think one of the things that I took away from this, I think I take for granted, and many of my peers take for granted, the ease with which we can create the guitars that we make here in the United States. Tools are readily available, materials are readily available, they're affordable. And so I guess I've always evaluated everyone else around the world to be kind of in the same boat, you know? And so when I see craftsmanship that is maybe not to the level that I expect it to be, I immediately assume it's a skill level type thing. And what you start to realize is that, you know, I have access to incredible router bits or chisels, or, you know, there's just tools that I have that make my life and my job easier and allow me to do a better job. And people don't have access to that all over. As Karen's been here, he's been buying up every single thing that I have in my shop and putting it into a suitcase, because it's not that he can't get the tool, but the tool may be $20, but it's going to cost him $300 to ship it to India. And when you do that over and over and over and over again, he can't make a living if he's paying 25 times the going rate for every piece of material or every tool to build his guitars. And it really opened my eyes in the way that, you know, for him to do the work that he's doing in the shop that he's in with the materials and tools that he's doing is mind-boggling to me. In that regard, it's almost a higher level of craftsmanship than what I'm used to, because I have things at my disposal that make it very easy to build great guitars. And that was kind of a big takeaway, and that's part of the reason why I want to go to India next year. We've already kind of planned the trip, but like to really understand, wow, you know, not everybody walks into a shop and has, you know, 3 band saws or, you know, whatever. I mean, it just, there's a lot of people that just don't have access to the stuff that we do. And so that's been kind of a huge learning experience. You know, there's times where I would just turn and be like, well, why don't you just use this? And he's like, it's not available in India. You know, or I can't get the one that you have. I can get one from China that's lesser quality and it breaks or whatever. So it's these simple solutions that I take for granted. In our discussion, there were a lot of times where he was just like, that's not an option for me. And so we've had to problem solve and figure out, you know, how to get around some of those things. And oh, by the way, he's going home with like 250 pounds worth of new gear. So I gave him another suitcase. He bought another backpack. So I mean,
I'm going to go back and construct another room to put all the things that I'm going back with.
So it's pretty funny because literally he's going home with almost a full shop, which again shows you the dedication and determination. You know, because not many people would do that.
I'm willing to face my wife once I get back.
There's been some interesting conversations as the credit card bills have come through since he's
Okay, so like my entire journey, even the non-instrument related bit.
well, you know, on the
You were born in a little shanty
I was,
town.
yeah, you know, 35 years ago on a full moon night. No.
Let's do it in real time.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
So you're
Straight
35.
out of college. I'm 35 years old. Straight out of college, I moved into the field of adventure tourism for a while. I was working in Nepal, and I used to take groups of people trekking into the Himalayas, and that was awesome fun. I loved every moment of it, and I think I started thinking about how to earn a living doing that. And at that point, for whatever reason, I moved back to India and joined the corporate setup. And I had short stints, first with the bank and then with IBM, where I was training people at a call center. And following that, I got into slightly more serious corporate training programs on team building and leadership development. And I did that for quite a while, for about 8 years more. And during that time, while I was running these training programs, I had a band going, and I also had a bunch of guitars, which I couldn't really get set up and repaired and maintained the way, just regular maintenance. I couldn't find a guy locally in New Delhi to do that for me, to any standard at least. So I started messing around with it myself. About 10 years ago, this is about 2007 or 2008, I reached out to some builders in the US. I emailed them and asked them for advice, saying how do I fix my guitar, how do I take care of it, and they recommended some books and DVDs. And I discovered the notorious or famous Stumac, which has basically been responsible for me being in debt for the last 10 years. But it was fun because I suddenly found this wealth of information over there, and I was like, wow, there's a whole world that deals with repairing and building instruments. And so I started tinkering around with my own guitars in my basement. And a year or so down the line, I started getting calls from other people who I didn't even know, saying, oh, I've played a guitar that you messed around with and it's playing really well. Would you set up my guitar? And so the repairs kind of started off on the side. And I had a day job through this entire stretch. Fast forward to another year or two later, I started thinking, how difficult can it be to build a guitar? So I started with an electric guitar. That was my first. It was a standard Telecaster style guitar. It's the only, I think, straight up copy that I've made to date. That and one SG. So I made that Tele, and a friend of mine came over one day and he's like, oh, that's really nice. So I was like, yeah, you can have it. And he still got it. He's living in Israel now, so he's got the guitar with him. And then I realized that the electric guitar is not really what excites me. And so my brain started thinking, how tough can it be to make an acoustic guitar? Which in retrospect was a really bad idea. Because I had no idea how to sharpen a chisel. I didn't know that planes and all these hand tools were required to do these things. Once you think about it, of course they're required. But at that point it was just like, oh, it's a guitar, let's just make one. And then all hell broke loose. So I had to literally learn how to sharpen tools, how to figure out what tools are appropriate for building an instrument. I got a DVD set which taught me how to build a guitar-shaped object, and I used that to build my first guitar. And it was all right. It still plays. I mean, it's fairly musical. Not the prettiest thing on the planet, but not quite Frankenstein's monster either. Okay, it's like in between, not too bad. And so from there on, it got into I started getting more and more serious. So now I've got a full library with books and articles and various journals. Eventually, I decided to quit my day job, and I went and studied in Ireland for 3.5 months, and learned how to build acoustic guitars. And from there on, it's just been putting my head down and building. And in the last 4 years that my business has been operational, we've done about 55, 56 guitars now. And just the fact that we've been able to put together so many guitars, I say we because I also have two guys in my workshop helping me out now. So the fact that we've been able to put so many guitars out just gives me a slightly better understanding of how the instrument functions, because I've managed to make enough mistakes in those 50 guitars and fix and find new ways of doing things. So it's been a really condensed learning experience. And then once I started doing shows, it was amazing because I got to meet people like Jason who are so helpful and supportive and free with information. And more often than not, like at least my experience has been really positive meeting luthiers from all over the world. I have never come across guys who don't want to share information with me. And so it's amazing the community that we have as guitar makers, because today I get stuck with anything and we're on a group on Facebook and it's literally you take 10 seconds, put up a question, in half an hour you've got 30 established builders from around the world all giving their inputs. So it's ridiculous. I mean how well or how well supported this community is, and no one wants any kind of compensation or credit for anything. They're just like, all right, this worked for me. Here's a product you can try. Here's a tool you can try. Here's a technique you can try. So it's amazing. And the idea is, yes, to reach a stage where I build an amazing guitar, but simultaneously also start giving back wherever possible. So in India now I've got budding guitar makers who reach out to me, and I'm happy to share whatever information I have with them. Because other people have been helping me out, and that's just the way it's going to go. That's my story.
It's a very good story. I didn't even fall asleep through it or anything. I think we pretty much paid attention almost the whole time.
Almost.
We're pretty close.